Hello one, hello all, it's the gothiest ghost of them all, Casper in the flesh, and it's time for a review of Jpeg Mafia. I lay down my life for you. This is the latest album from singer, songwriter, experimental beast of a rapper, producer, Jpeg Mafia, whose discography under the Jpeg name I have mostly enjoyed. And I know what you're thinking, where's Sean? Sean is nowhere to be found. I've looked everywhere, not trying to look all over the house. It's late, Bay's sleeping. So yeah, no Sean for this video, which is a good thing. But anyway, Jpeg Mafia, who has had a discography I've had a vast enjoyment for under the Jpeg name. We last heard from him in a solo context back in 2021 with LP. So it's certainly been a handful of years since we've gotten a solo project. And after waiting this long, actually finally receiving the album after giving it numerous listens, Jpeg did not disappoint. Yeah, Sean's not here. He would have called me out for like winking and then stupidly asked me like why I'm winking, and then I call him out for being a fake fan, or never mind. Anyway, Jpeg Mafia, brand new album where I was a little nervous about, a little skeptical on going into, especially with how unnoticeable his production was and that god-awful trash fire Vultures, which was an abomination of a Kanye album. No, I'm not calling him Ye, sorry. And I did feel kind of lukewarm on the first single leading into this. But Don't Rely on Other Men has certainly grown on me and certainly works in the context of the album. But the song that really hit me, really instantaneous, really a banger for me right off the bat, was Miedo, which is an absolute banger of a track. And I feel on this album, Peggy is definitely showing more of a vulnerable side this time around. So the lyrics have vulnerability and certainly more confessional, which honestly, in my opinion, is the best way to close out an album, which he does on the closer, which is I Recovered From This. And not to mention him speaking to the engineer, affirming that this is it, took a long time to do this, but we got it done. It really is a powerful closer and definitely a powerful moment, especially if you know how much passion Peggy puts into his music and how much this album really meant to him and his fans. And I feel with every Peggy project, there is definitely a lot to chew over, because I feel in terms of production, emotion, lyrics, always something to pull from with each listen, which in many respects I've been able to do with a handful of listens, which requires numerous listens, which isn't a bad thing at all. In fact, I feel that is the magic and the charm of a Peggy project. Not to mention, there is a lot of variation here, whether it's his emotions, the production. But for the most part, even though there is variation, Peggy is super relentless here, and unapologetically so. But Peggy's smoke here is definitely justified, as he goes over frauds, scammers, our current genocidal leader, Biden, PDF creeps, culture appropriators, mostly white people who appropriate black culture and use it as a costume. As he says, baby mama looking like a rap snack, grew up white, now they act black. Not to mention his shots at Biden, and rightfully so, with his despicable actions of arming and funding a genocide. And honestly, I will say in terms of his multifaceted game, Peggy is definitely on it. Like, it is top notch here, and this is probably the best he's ever done. But that is not to mitigate his discography as a whole. No, in my opinion, he has a lot of great albums. It's just this one here I feel is definitely more robust and definitely sounds more cohesive here. And the song titles are just absolutely insane, but I love them. Like the song I Scream This in the Mirror Before I Interact with Anyone, which is packed with super confrontational and clever bars, with an energetic delivery that starts with these raw, isolated drums that are immediately berated by these chunky, distorted riffs, a lot of metal guitar variations. This whole thing reminds me of Peggy is just orchestrating a mosh pit. I feel the heaviness in the production, the power in Peggy's vocals just coalesce to make a great starting track. And there is a plethora of wordplay and scathing bars here. Very no-holds-barred with humorous shots at Shaq, disgusting transphobes like Jake Paul, shots at religion, capitalism, nepo babies and their greedy ways, their entitlement, detractors, all over these chugging riffs that sound like something out of old school Metallica or Pantera, sequenced with fat drum grooves, a lot of bass. The whole thing just sounds like Peggy is this one-man metal band. Then we have Miedo, which is such a nice mix of powerful, engaging phases with absolutely memorable bars, pumping synth melodies, the shouted vocal samples, with wailing guitars. It sounds like Daft Punk collabing with 2 Live Crew and a really passionate 80s band that's so psychedelic, otherworldly, and blood pumping. Now, this album does also land in different places sonically. Like, I don't recall Peggy rapping with this gorgeous and most ethereal production, honestly. He has rapped to more ambient tracks in the past, sure, but this one right here just sounds so epic, so, how can I put this, art popish, with absolutely gorgeous, lavish string sections, beautiful, expressive R&B vocals, which I believe are sampling Don't Walk Away sample by Jade. And of course I'm speaking on I'll Be Right There For You, which I feel complements greatly Peggy's charismatic, speedy flow and straightforward bars. And I also love the glistening sci-fi like arpeggiated hyper synths. Like the ending kind of reminds me of an MF Doom track in a way. There's also Exmilitary, where Peggy has this thing where he does reference albums, but it's probably one of the most emotionally sequenced moments on the album, because as I alluded to, with the production here, Peggy is very precise. He knows what beat to make and how to perform to it. Like when it comes to the beat switches, when it comes to the phases, he is spot on with the emotion that it captures and knows how to perform and coalesce with it. Like when the strings come in, you immediately hear the hunger, you immediately hear the passion and all the motivation that Peggy has in this single passage. There's also either on or off the drugs, which I believe is a future interpolation of Turn On the Lights. But if it was like a doo-wop vintage 60s, 70s era, which sonically is immensely heavenly, as these ascending choral vocals just float on top, displaying these bass variations, breathtaking strings, with a blaring impassioned guitar solo, where Peggy is sharing just a vast amount of introspection and reflection on his career, his place in music, his drive, staying focused, and his rotating relationship with drug use. Definitely packed with a lot of emotional commentary and integrity, and about staying strong, self-affirming your place, and also your confidence as a person, which again is another stunning coalescing of the passage and Peggy's passion that he puts into it, which lyrically makes for a very heart-wrenching track, a very intoxicating track, motivating at the same time. And the predecessors show a excellent display of versatility. It's Dark and Hell is Hot, for example, shows what you would get if you had Hispanic music with the darkest, trippiest set of production you could find, with merciless shots at Drake that kind of give Kendrick a run for his money, you know, regarding his sus behavior. And the track is laced with these, I believe to be Spanish vocal samples, with a booming nocturnal beat that really proves how creative Peggy is with his amalgamations and his sonic design, which shows Peggy could give you a banger, but also something tripped out as well. And the song, New Black History, I really took as a aha moment, where I know Future and Peggy are really apples to oranges, I know. But when I heard the sample, the futuristic, trappy, robotic sample, I was like, wait, I'm drawing comparisons here because I could see how JPEG would fit perfectly on Future production. Future would probably fit perfectly on Peggy's production. And then hearing the sample, it just clicked, like right there. But yeah, if Future was to collab with Peggy, it would just be an absolute banger. And there was a great verse from Vince Staples, where, as I spoke on before, Peggy does a well-deserved track on predators and people advocating for bailing them out. And Peggy is no stranger to calling out seedy behavior. Don't Rely on Other Men, as I mentioned before, was a song as a single I wasn't too crazy on, but I feel works better in the context of this album, where Peggy, as I mentioned before, does address culture vultures, and the production is immensely bassy, walls of bass, ominous bells, where his vocals are lo-fi but amplified, but I feel they create a nice contrast as well. Also, I love the inclusion of these wondrous, ghostly backing vocals, blaring guitar melodies. The whole thing really proves you don't have to be religious to create a religious experience. Now, when it comes to the second half of the album, I do think the first half is stronger, but the bop to flop ratio, it's mostly bops, especially with Jihad Joe, that features this elevation of bloodthirsty bars, which even goes through these heavy phases. The whole track is definitely a vast change of pace, but it definitely works. As Peggy starts it off with ambient, atmospheric, as his aggression just elevates and evolves through the track. But also the production has a rotation too, as it goes to electronic back to straight savage with these ominous guitar chords. And what's cool about this track too is how Peggy is keeping the older elements of his style, but also including the new as well, but doing it in an organized fashion. He has given you something old, but also he is also adding something refreshing as well. The jazz horn driven JPEGUltra, which is a fantastic collab between Jpeg Mafia and Denzel Curry, which has these hilariously clever bars from Denzel. The whole thing has like a vibe of a blaxploitation film that has these lavish layers of instrumentation. The whole thing feels very nocturnal but also braggadocious, with a very serene psychedelic outro, with immensely scathing and hilarious shots at Trump sycophant Stacey Dash. And the closer, as I mentioned before, I recovered from this. Easily the most sobering track here. Easily the most sobering track on the entire record. That features these eerie space vocoder vocals that remind me of Laurie Anderson, except she's doing an interpolation of Janet Jackson's Funny How Time Flies. And I am trying to see if this is Laurie Anderson, but if not, the cadence is really spot on, and I would not deny this person is a Laurie Anderson fan, which has these beautiful layers of gorgeous strings that create this deeply moving bed of instrumentation where Peggy is super open, super vulnerable about his mental health, past relationship, his drive, his career. It's incredibly moving and also euphoric as well, and a great way to close out the album. Now, this track is loaded with fire. Songwriting is great. The production is very engaging, various, and very intricate as well. The vocal performances are stellar. Barely any duds for me. You do have tracks here though that do serve more as interludes that didn't really give me anything strong or compelling as the highlights. For example, I did find the track Put That on the Bible to be kind of disjointed, not well assembled, and really kind of just interlude with a vocalist on there, break, Peggy rapping again. It just feels very incomplete. But look, for the most part, the flow of this album is great. Production, amazing. The vocals on here, killer. This thing is impactful, it's moving, it's adventurous, it's ambitious, and this is coming from someone who loves JPEG's catalog. So in my opinion, I feel this very well contends with LP, and I love that album. So I feel in the realm of experimental rap, or just rap overall, which Peggy is bringing intricacy to, and continues to do so, and does it well. I'm feeling a 4.5 out of 5 on this album. But if you've given this a listen, what did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? I am your plug. Please sub. Show some love. If you love Caspa, Gothic Ghost, JPEG Mafia. Till we meet again.